That experience really is what led to the placemaking program here. So in 2015, we started a master's degree, 40-credit master's degree in placemaking, which the aim of which was to provide placemakers with the skills necessary to understand, working with communities, issues of landscape design and urban design, equity, management, governance, inclusion, and so on. So that's kind of how we got here. I think this dialogue continues. The placemaking movement is growing and growing. And I think one of the sort of perpetual issues is the issue of governance, management, and those issues around public space. So we're going to hear from a lot of good people this morning. And I look forward to the whole program. So welcome, and I'm going to hand it over to Ryan to get us kicked off. Ryan, by the way. Ryan is PlacemakingUS. He says he's the initiator. I think he's more like the instigator, really, probably, but he's the man. Here you go.
Thank you, David, so much. Also the tech. Okay, I'll stay here for a minute. Good morning, everybody. How are you? So wonderful to see your beautiful faces. Welcome to the New York Public Realm Roundtable. So as David might have said, I may have instigated a thing or two, but I'm definitely in a long line of instigators and also a horizontal line of partners and co-production folks. And so we did not do this alone. This was such a monumental lift of so many generous, awesome people who gave their time, their treasure, so beyond the logo soup of contributors, I did want to shout out some of the humans behind those logos. First of all, thanks to the host, David Burney and Pratt University and his amazing team. Thank you, David. And thank you to Tim Tompkins and Blaze, who are huge thought partners on what we're going to work on, what we're going to accomplish, and who needed to be in this room. Give those guys a little applause here. We're going to send everybody. I don't want to hurt your hands, so maybe, well, for the rest of it, we can hold the applause till the end. But also, Victoria Panaccio with the Downtown New York Alliance. Thank you so much for all your logistical support and my shoulder to cry on. Ethan Kent, who so many of us would not be doing the work that we're doing at the scale that we're doing without his mentorship, leadership, friendship. What an amazing guy. So grateful for Ethan. Super big thanks to Vester, who sponsored your caffeine this morning and tomorrow morning as well. And they make wonderful furniture. I heard there's some out on the Pratt campus that you might be able to sit on later. Big thanks to Mike Lydon of Street Plans. This probably wouldn't have happened without Mike. Many of you guys know I'm extremely into food and a foodie, and when he offered to throw a paella party for this event, I was like, okay, we're doing it. So big thanks to Mike and his amazing team. To Fred Kent and Kathy Madden, not just for opening up their home, but for opening our eyes as to what a city is and what it could be, and for a lifetime of leadership in this field that has, I think, all of us riding boats in your stream. So thank you guys so much for being here. It means so much. And back there, Daniel Latorra from the Wise City and Brandon Neubauer of Brando Productions, who are making a killer documentary of this process and film. Thank you guys so much and your amazing work. The city of New York, especially Ya-Ting Liu, her team, and Emily, I'm not going to try and pronounce Emily's last name, but W. You guys have been so awesome and generous, and it's so amazing to work with a city that really wants to learn and share, and that isn't always the norm, and so we're deeply appreciative of your openness and your energy and enthusiasm for these topics, which we all care so much about. Moving right along, Jackson Chabot, what a guy, helps lead the, he's like shaking his head. Not a spotlight guy, but wow, what a lifter of great causes and great people to do great things. I don't think the momentum would keep up without what you're doing, and so we're deeply appreciative of what you're going to do 364 more days of the year after this little nice, cherry on a cupcake thing that we're doing. So thank you. Have to thank my co-director of PlacemakingUS, Madeline Spencer, who puts up with me, who's traveling with me for a whole month while we were in Philadelphia, in Baltimore, here in New York, and then going to Jacksonville, Florida after this. Thank you for your patience and ideas and energy and support all the time. I put Ya-Ting again. Thanks again. The amazing tour leaders who are going to take us out in the field, like Jim Burke from 34th Avenue Open Streets Project, and many, many more. And big thank you to those who traveled here. It's so many people told us it was really hard for them to get here to New York City. And so I really appreciate the people that, got on a plane, got on a train, and got here by various means, like Dorian McDuffie from Atlanta, City of Atlanta, Krista Nightingale, who will be here from Better Block from Dallas, Texas, John Bela from San Francisco, TJ McGuire from Canada, Guillermo Bernal from Mexico City, Daniela Chacon from Ecuador, Lex de Jong from our Placemaking Europe network and from Amsterdam, LeJuano Varnell, also from Atlanta, from one of my favorite neighborhoods, Sweet Auburn, Ben Schulman, who was at Memphis but now in Chicago, so you get a little less credit for that flight. Rachel Daly Alexander from up the road in Boston, Laura Phillips Edgecombe from Jax, Simon Bertrand from San Francisco, Abigail Sekeli from Boston area, and many, many more who I don't quite know where you came from or what you're doing here, but thank you so much for filling in a seat. I also just took a little look at the Zoom, and we're actually joined in this room by some folks who digitally, from Michigan, from Pennsylvania, from Texas, from Oregon, from Florida, from Australia, from Japan, from Alabama, from Vermont, from Ohio. I didn't see if Jan Lin's on there, but maybe from Singapore. And these aren't yahoos that just randomly clicked a link. These are people that work for the government, that work for the state, that work for their cities, who are have their eyes on this city. I go all over the world, and people are always looking at what is New York doing next, so that they can learn and do their best as well. So, okay, thank you for all of that, guys. Now, this is not PlacemakingUS's first rodeo in New York City. We actually have been here, brought a group here last year. Yes, that is me dressed as Jane Jacobs. And her estate was actually pretty jazzed about it. They want to update the image. And so last year, we actually brought a group of placemakers from around the world, and we really got a world-class education on the streets of New York City, what you're doing here. We were blown away, not just at what's getting done, but at the generosity and access you provide to teach these lessons to other recovering and wounded cities that need this sort of penicillin on their streets. And this was such a great moment. Mike Lydon leading us down the Broadway corridor, and one of my colleagues came up and said, "What does this guy know about tactical urbanism?" And I said, well, he wrote the book Tactical Urbanism in 2008, so I think he knows a thing or two about it. And it just was such a mind-melding moment that we were walking down the street with this guy who I remember picking up that book over 10 years ago and having my mind blown and walking deeper down this road. And seeing those changes, both temporary and more permanent, and spending time in Rockefeller Plaza and Bryant Park with Fred Kent, getting really the eyes on the street to understanding what made these places, that they're not a copy and paste situation, but that these amazing places evolved through a process of co-production with community, through trial and error, through iterative co-design. It's not what the message most people are getting out there when they try and take take this technique to their towns and cities. There's something very secret in this special sauce. Getting to spend time in the Bronx with Majora Carter and looking at the serious issues of environmental justice and trying to improve your own community and being called a gentrifier and how you deal with that emotional rejection of trying to be on the front end of changing these anarchic and terrible systems that we've become so accustomed to. And so in doing this project, putting this together, I spent a lot of time on the phone with a lot of New Yorkers. I will send you the therapy bill to the city of New York for all of this clinical hours I spent. But I think a clear message came out of all this, which is that we're entering a new era of cities, an era of co-production and co-design. And this is completely what was reiterated to me again and again. And for those of you who've been following this event from the beginning, you might have seen some of these wonky AI graphics that we kind of started with, where it's kind of this AI D&D kind of concept. And at first, this really just came out of when I first saw Ya-Ting speak and heard about the Office of the Public Realm and the sort of silliness that that kind of sounded to me of the Realm Keepers Roundtable. And I just kept saying that to myself. The R's just really rolled. I love these like Byzantine tapestries of street-side dining and Washington Square Park with these golden monks sort of congregating for various reasons, and this tactical urbanism stained glass motif. And it was interesting because I was in Australia and we were like getting kind of mixed, okay, are they going to think we're like some kind of public space cult? I don't know if this is going to fly at the end of production. And I was with our colleagues in Australia, and of course, they're from more of the UK tradition. We have, Bob, you're here from the UK too. Thank you so much. They kind of explained to me, that government speak, that impersonal, damning language that is that red tape that so much of us come up across and feel so hamstrung by, is actually this. It's actually a hangover from medieval institutions in Europe. That this is the grand old church, this is the word of the king, coming down to ye minor peasants, telling you what thou shall and shall not do, and how ye shall behave, and that we're still living in this sort of feudal system of anachronisms that's dictating this free, wonderful, advanced society that we live in. And to point that out, there's a subway map on a scroll. And that's kind of the situation that we're in. And I thought that was so apropos of what we're here to do, is not to bash the government or any of the people that are in that institution, but to understand what is old and legacy and can be discarded, and what government is really here for us to do. And I think it's also very interesting that this week, 809 years ago, mind you, a couple of barons, which you might say were the community-based organizations of the day, got together and made this point very clear and made old King John sign this document called the Magna Carta, which is the foundation of all the freedoms and all of the liberty that we enjoy today, saying that government is not above us, government is us. Government is for us, and we need to collectively agree what the rules are so we can thrive collectively together. Okay, there's a lot of problematic stuff too going on back there, so I'm kind of like glossing over that and making a very broad analogy, but in the keynotes of human history, this is sort of the path that we're on. And I also want to recall, as the language of, Jane Jacobs and equity and inclusion and diversity have become so utilized in planner speak, and in the typical forms of where our public realm and our built environment are being produced, they're robing themselves in the language that of people first and all that. But lest we forget that when Jane Jacobs wrote Death and Life of Great American Cities 63 years ago, this is the ad for it. The city planners are ravaging our cities. And lest we forget, the first sentence of the book is, this book is an attack on current city planning and rebuilding. It goes on to say that she's putting forth the principles of a completely new form of city building, this collectivism, this of the street observation that we're talking about, and that there is an orthodoxy and there is a systematic top-down view that is very attractive to certain types of people and to all of us when we're afraid, and that we really have to be very cognizant of this battle which goes on every day since then. How many politicians still resemble Robert Moses at the ribbon cutting in their suit and the Capital Improvement Project, which, yes, it looks great on the newspaper, but does it really move the needle for everyday people? Is it equitable? Is it possible to do that versus the little old lady on the street corner who cares about her neighbors and takes the time to understand how the organized complexity of the city? And why is it that we go to everybody for their opinion all at once when we know this is how society is structured? That you have your innovators, you have your early adopters, you have a gap where then the majority starts to take hold. This is the way things work, but we're always going at the forefront to pull everybody on what they want. And we're afraid of the opinion of people who are not ready for change. It's not the correct way to do it, and that's why as placemakers, we prefer and we push up the iterative, experimental, and cooperative process so that these ideas can diffuse through society, like Parking Day, which started as a singular action in San Francisco and has become a worldwide movement where everywhere I go around the world, they're talking about Parking Day. Even I was just in Thailand, in Bangkok. They're using parklets and Parking Day right outside of the municipal hall to change the way that the entire country thinks about public space. And don't we have the guy that invented Parking Day here? Is that true? Or maybe he's in the... Oh, I see him! 7th row. Get him, guys. Give John Bela a round of applause. And so I think very much today's theme of this talking in here is about this age of civic co-production. Some of the ways that that's being moved forward, both here but also internationally, from City Hall to the streets of Queens, and from USA to Latin America and Central America. Tomorrow will be led by Tim Tompkins and Blaze on what are these barriers that we're facing as we advance forward, and who are our bedfellows? Who are the awesome people who've been working in the trenches to make these changes? What are the tools and relationships available to us to move this momentum forward? I don't remember what this slide's supposed to be about. Oh, yes, so, okay, so, but we're placemakers, okay? This is very actually foreign for us to be in the lecture hall, but I think it was really important to all have this moment together and this platform, and to have certain voices set the tone and enrich our understanding of what's going on. But we like to do things in field. So a majority of the next few days will be actually spent on the streets, kicking the tires, talking to people in the spaces that they've adapted and changed, brainstorming, ideating, learning, getting inspired, feeling it in your bones. I go to places all over the country and the world, and the second I see them, I get a visceral memory of another experience, usually from New York City, where I'm like, oh, have you tried this? Or, oh, you must talk to so-and-so. And I want you to build up those muscles and have those type of reactions, and not so much the left brain cerebral, hey, that PowerPoint was pretty good. Did you see his bar graph? But more, oh, wow, I remember that. I remember walking with Mike and hearing that phrase that now is a key to changing things for all of us. So, without further ado, I want to get us on to our speakers of today. And first up, it's my honor to really center this in someone who's been centering so much of the work here in town for the last couple of years. Jackson Chabot, can come and tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Good morning, everyone. So Ryan tasked me with 3 things. I don't have any slides, so I'm going to keep moving around the space here. And I reordered his 3 things just a little bit. You might hear that my voice is a little hoarse. There was something called congestion pricing that was supposed to start in a couple of weeks. I've been at rallies on Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, and last night. Jim Burke, who you'll hear from in a little bit, has also lost his voice. So the first thing that I reorganized a little bit is to talk about sort of the opportunities as well as the challenges of what we're facing in New York City. And I think congestion pricing encapsulates a lot of it. So if you take away nothing else from this, please call your representatives. If you do not live in New York City, please also call your representatives. Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, you might have heard of them. Please call them. Very simple. Just tell them you want congestion pricing on June 30th. So there are a lot of negative things going on. There are a lot of challenges going on, but there are also a lot of opportunities. And so the framing that I want to bridge from there is around organizing. And I think as Ryan talks about co-production, part of the reason we're all here today is organizing and talking to our neighbors, talking to people that think like us, as well as people that do not think like us, and how we can have both sets of conversations and grow the tent to be bigger and bigger. Among these challenging times, I have invoked very frequently my colleague Sabina's Zoom background graphic that on one hand has a shark chasing a whole bunch of fish. And it says, "Don't be afraid." On the other end, the fish are chasing the shark, and it says, "Organize." And so it's very easy for us to stick our heads in the sand and to think, well, I can't do anything about this. We say, oh, congestion pricing, and the decision is bad. And that is 100% a valid reaction. But I challenge all of you, whether it's for congestion pricing, for your public space challenges, for a professional challenge, to think beyond that and think about organizing. Find the one other crazy person who thinks like you do, the instigator or initiator that thinks like you do as well. So part of what we did, for open plans as well as for some of you all in the room here during the pandemic and a couple of years ago, was think in this mentality, and we created the Alliance for Public Space Leadership. So co-founded by the Municipal Arts Society, American Institute of Architects New York, New Yorkers for Parks, and then bringing on Design Trust for Public Space as a steering committee member more recently. And we thought about, what does this look like? And we framed it very intentionally with the alliance and thinking about the collectivity of it all, also framing it around leadership. And so when we're thinking about leadership, it was both an assertion that we are leaders, both to the general, to our neighbors, to the city, to the administration coming in, but we're also calling for leadership. And it's a reflexive thing that I think we all should think about as placemakers as well in our public space. You all are doing a lot of the legwork, popping up public spaces every day, calling elected officials, navigating the permitting process, the nuts and bolts and the challenges. You are also you should be asking for more from your cities and from what you deserve, and for faster, in my opinion, but I recognize the limitations and the challenges there. And so when we did this, thinking a lot about what can we do, and recognizing that New York City has a lot of great things, as David was pointing out at the top of the conversation. We've also seen a tremendous arc over the past even 10, 15 years, but dates back much beyond and before that. So we are going in the right direction. Again, I would argue as an advocate, I get paid to push harder, faster, and for more, and so that's uncomfortable sometimes, but that was the framework with what we were thinking about. And so what that really led to, which is kind of the third part of my introduction today here, is for the appointment of a Chief Public Realm Officer in New York City. And we all thought about this as initiating organizations slightly differently. The Municipal Arts Society has had their Fight for Light campaign with New Yorkers for Parks over the past couple of years, and they called for one thing. We called for an Office of Public Space Management. Urban Design Forum has had other iterations. Design Trust has had other iterations. We've all thought about this in different ways. And I think as part of that organizing, we said, okay, we do need to sacrifice each a bit of ourselves to get to the greater good. And what that manifested as, and Ryan's Realm Keepers graphics and AI floored me, is a Chief Public Realm Officer. And I won't read you Ya-Ting's bio. You can Google it. You can find it elsewhere. But I want to speak personally for our interactions together and what I think she's done for New York City and New York City's public space already to date. She is passionate, she is caring, she is energetic, and she is determined. She has been a good communicator for all of us and a key partner in this work. The times are tough. I won't cut it very short there. The times are tough. city level, local level, even granular than that, federal level. But it is really impactful to have a key partner and a true partner in this work, someone who is willing to have the tough conversations, someone who is willing to be vulnerable in this work. And so I'm really thankful and really glad to be able to introduce Ya-Ting this morning. Please welcome our Chief Public Realm Officer.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Ryan, you did an incredible job already sort of taking care of the acknowledgments. I feel like this work ultimately is about building community, and none of that happens alone. So I just want to, again, take a moment to thank all of the incredible partners within government from our city agencies, whether it's DOT, Parks Department, DCP, you name it. There have been incredible leaders and supporters, and also outside government from Jackson, Urban Design Forum. I mean, once I start naming, I know I have forgotten some of the groups, but I stand on the shoulders of so many before me that has been in this space, building, laying the groundwork, putting changes both in terms of the built environment through activations, but also in terms of policy inside government. So it's just a real incredible honor to be here today. And what I hope to do is share with you a little bit of how me and my team, and I just want to acknowledge my staff, Maria Villa-Franklin here, who has been my incredible right hand. Give her a round of applause. She has been just really, we are a small but mighty team, and show you a little bit of behind the scenes of how the city of New York came about creating this role, how our team has gone about carving out our portfolio, and share with you a little bit our set of priorities for in the past year and a half, and also going forward. So with that, do I press? Here we go. All right, Ryan, you're not the only person in town with slides, okay? With funny slides. I love to show this because, as Ryan mentioned, the name, you know, and the branding and the title of this, it always evokes, you know, a smile, a laugh. I mean, even from my kids today, they're just kind of like, the realm, what is that? You're in charge of the outside? Like, how does this work? What do you do about the outside? But clearly, at the end of the day, this is really what it's about. The spaces in between buildings, that is sort of the secret sauce, I think, for any city around the world. That is a place where people come together, where cultures come into interaction, and the vibrancy and the energy of a city is felt. And so this is really what we're trying to do, to improve that experience, whether it's in a Manhattan Central Business District, whether it's in a block party, in the Bronx, and everything in between. The spaces between buildings is effectively what we're focused on. And so for colleagues that are traveling, that have come from other parts of the country, and to those that are listening online from other parts of the world, I've been pretty bullish this past year, really advocating, you know, with other municipalities and advocates in other cities, that they should also be advocating and thinking about creating a role or team focused on public realm in their municipal governments. And I'll get into a little bit why. And as Jackson mentioned before, the work and groundwork and the case making for why such a role is important has been laid by lots of advocacy groups predating this administration. There is a sort of agency alphabet soup when it comes to jurisdiction, policy setting, regulation setting of the outside and all of these spaces between buildings. And for partners, whether you are a business improvement district, whether you're a community group, whether you're a block association, when you are trying to make improvements or there are some issues, often the experience has been hard to really understand who do you go to and who do you talk to address these concerns. And I think the real sort of, the real moment where it moved and the sort of aperture really opened up, I think, in the beginning of this administration is coming out of COVID, Mayor Adams and Governor Hochul created this new New York panel. And they convened this panel of, I call it the panel of muckety mucks. So it was both business leaders, but also civic leaders, advocates, and you name it, across a variety of sectors to sort of ask the question, how do we bring New York City back from COVID in a better way, in a more sustainable way, in a more equitable and inclusive way? And then I joke that effectively, I became Initiative 10. There was 40 proposals that came out of this process about all the different things that the city leaders should focus on. And one resounding bucket of recommendations was that creating vibrant public spaces was critical to the city's not just recovery, but also its sustainability going forward for all those who live, work, and play in New York City. So out of this effort and process and now getting sort of big business and real estate and the business community on board as well, the position was created. And I have been overwhelmed this past year by just how the level of enthusiasm, warmth, and offer for support and help to be a sounding board. So many folks in this room are part of that kind of community to say, oh my gosh, we're so excited this role is created. We're here, tell us how we can help, let us know how we can support, we're here, and that to me has been just a really sort of humbling experience, and that's also the energy that really keeps us and our team going. And in some ways, I love showing this org chart because this is it. This is what it's about. We are not and it's interesting, and I'd be curious to hear sort of other cities or communities' perspectives. We are not a separate office. So our team sits within the Deputy Mayor for Operations chain of command. So we sit with her team. And I have found that it has been really helpful to sort of be really kind of immersed and subsumed in the operations line, because most of the capital agencies, that is DOT, Parks Department, DEP, so all the things that are under the street, all sit in the operations portfolio. And being able to establish that line of communication, feedback, and engagement with those agencies directly has really allowed our, again, small but mighty team to find the folks within those agencies that share the similar vision, enthusiasm, and goals to really advance and make improvements and changes. So how are we prioritizing this work in New York City today? So I've been talking about it in terms of hardware, software, and orgware. So I want to get into quickly what I mean by that. Hardware is our city government needs to improve our ability to deliver these built environment changes in a faster way. I think that under the Bloomberg administration and under the leadership of Commissioner Jeanette Sada-Khan, there were incredible transformations made using temporary materials that really helped move the needle in profound ways. In a lot of ways defined, what cities can do to reimagine public spaces throughout the city. This continues to be a tool. It is a very critical tool that is being deployed, I think, really nicely and wonderfully by the Department of Transportation. But at the end of the day, I feel like, and Jackson spoke a little bit to this, the kind of evolution and journey of where we are now as a city is, we should start making some permanent capital improvements. And that is why the Adams administration, under the leadership of Deputy Mayor Joshi, has really prioritized capital process reform. So I don't want to, and I'm not the expert, it's my colleagues in DMO, that is the Chief Infrastructure Officer, Allison Landry, and her team. They have fought in the last 2 years in Albany and have won some significant reforms that will help our capital agencies shave off administrative paperwork, procurement times, and all of these things that ultimately allow our capital agencies to deliver these projects faster. This is important. The hardware piece is important. Why? Because we have to show and not tell. So just showing renderings of projects and that may not turn on until 10 or 15 years from now, you start to erode the public confidence in the city's ability to deliver. And so, again, under the Adams administration, we are really focused on making sure that we can deliver our key public space projects on time and on budget. I want to move to software. What do I mean by software? Well, our public spaces are only as good as how you feel when you're in them. So it doesn't require all the time a brand new park or something incredibly fancy. It could just be a small pocket park or small plaza, as long as it's well maintained, well activated, with lively programming. That makes and breaks a space. But guess what? The city of New York, and as a city, and all cities know this and struggle with this, we struggle with maintaining and activating program all of these spaces. The truth is we cannot do it alone. We desperately and critically rely on partners to do that. And what do partners look like? Partnerships. It's the whole gamut from, I saw Evan from the meatpacking bit, so from the bids to Jim and 34th Avenue to the Hort, we rely on all of these types of partnerships. Leslie at Streets Lab, the critical programming, but we also sometimes make it really cumbersome and onerous for external partners to work with the city. So we're really focused on trying to, again, reduce barriers, make that software a lot easier to work and make happen. Orgware. Part of what we're trying to do and what we've been very self-conscious of as a team at City Hall focused on public realm and public space improvements is that our agencies, we need to meet them where they're at, and we have to be value add. There are 10,000 task forces, 10,000 working groups that demand a lot of time and attention from our agencies. They're pulled in lots of different directions. And so as a team, we've tried to be very clear about what the priorities are and also to be helpful. So what do I mean by that? I'm showing this beautiful bathrooms project by the Parks Department in Canarsie Park. And they were all ready to go with this park's restroom, a brand new opening, a beautiful public restroom. But they were stuck with Con Ed and the back and forth with Con Ed being not being responsive to turn the power on so that they can officially open this park. So City Hall, our team is just like, whatever you need us to like escalate, you need us to have a ping from City Hall into Con Ed leadership, please let us know. And so we were able to be helpful there, and lo and behold, Con Ed was responsive, powered that site, and now it's open. So it's the little things like that in terms of orgware that we're trying to do as well to show value add to our agencies, whom we're asking a lot of, especially in this time. I want to highlight some priority public space projects, but that our team are project managing, again, with a lot of different agencies involved. It runs the gamut from Broadway Vision, which this group is very familiar with, and the Arches, Kim Lau Square in Chinatown, the future of Fifth, a major redesign of Fifth Avenue, which is a public-private partnership with the bids on that corridor. Broadway Junction in East New York and Queensway. And I highlight this sort of menu of projects to show that in each one, it came about a little bit differently, and the partnership and the funding structure is all a little bit different. And we sort of intentionally wanted to have a menu of different types of projects and scale and funding and, of course, geographic diversity to really show that when it comes to public space, like, it's all of the above. We need to give everything a try, a PPP, something that is more ground up, something that is like very long term, like Broadway Junction with the MTA, that is, 10 and 15 years from now, in order to have just a variety and a diversity of projects that we can, again, be value add, where we're shaving off time, where we're really helping our agencies to unstick issues and have better coordination with other entities outside the city government family. So in 1 year, what have we accomplished? Okay, I am so excited. Just about maybe 15 minutes ago or so, we finally released the first ever Public Realm report in the city of New York, called The Realm of Possibility. Thank you. 15 ways New York City is improving public space for New Yorkers. It's a highlight and a synthesis of all the work that we've been doing this past year and will be focused on in the next coming year. And I'm always just blown away, really, by the scale and scope of New York City. And the truth is, just in terms of our existing assets, there is really nothing comparable compared to the rest of the country. So we have divided the report into sort of 3 buckets. One is about improving the way people are experiencing public space throughout the city. We are currently, and DOT is taking the lead on this, implementing the country's largest outdoor dining program. We want to make sure that this program is something that is easy for restaurants to participate in, that there are clear design guidelines so that we can have really open sight lines on the street, and it improves the streetscape as opposed to enclosed structures going down the street that really block your sight lines. So we're really excited. This is a season of transition, and next summer we anticipate that New Yorkers, as you're moving around the city, you will see a lot more, beautiful al fresco style setups in the roadway. Sidewalk sheds. This is a uniquely, based on my travel and conversations with other cities, this really is a uniquely New York City issue. We are coming up on the 1-year announcement of Get Sheds Down, which is an effort we're working with Department of Buildings to really reform and get at the sort of structural issues of why New York City is plagued by scaffolding and sidewalk sheds. So we're really excited to partner with the City Council. There'll be a public hearing coming up, a council hearing coming up on the package of reforms that we believe will really make move the needle on getting these sidewalk sheds down faster. Street trees at lower costs. This is a shout out to the Parks Department and the Parks Department team. They have done an incredible job getting street tree coverage and green canopy coverage, targeting the neighborhoods that are the most climate and heat vulnerable. And we've been continuing to work with them to explore ways where we can really expand and help improve that effort. And again, at the end of the day, try to find ways to bring the cost down so that we could do more of that throughout the city. Public restrooms. I think it was a week ago, we did a You're in Luck initiative, You're in Luck, where we announced that the City of New York will be committed to building and refurbishing 82 new public restrooms throughout the city, largely, again, coming out of the Parks Department portfolio, but also at Department of Transportation, where we have the automated sort of self-cleaning toilets as well. And we also provided and created a new Google Map layer that can show New Yorkers where their nearest public restrooms are and what kind of amenities they have, like changing tables and whether or not it's, wheelchair accessible, et cetera. And so that has been an incredible effort led by Maria. She did a yeoman's job organizing all the resources and pulling that together. And again, this effort was a reminder that sometimes it's, again, about communication and government doing a better job and a clearer way of communicating the actual assets and resources that we do have available for the public. Lastly, curb space. That is the most contested real estate in the city of New York. And there are so many competing demands, especially now that everybody wants their packages delivered within 15 minutes. It has really created so much disorder and competition on the streetscape. And so again, under the leadership of our deputy mayor, we've been really focused working with DOT to help figure out ways to have micro hubs, ways that we can partner with bids to try to kind of reorganize and rationalize curb space in commercial areas. And then we've been also working really hard with City Council to figure out how we can create a real stronger regulatory framework with the massive growth of e-mobility devices on our city streets. Increased public space footprint in all 5 boroughs. This is more about the hardware. I will go through this a little bit faster, but again, all of these initiatives, the core sort of theme here is about showing, not telling. How do we deliver these projects faster? How do we make sure that these capital projects are completed on time and on budget? So we're focused a lot on a few skate park projects and a partnership that we have with Tony Hawk to build 4 new skate parks in New York City, 2 in the Bronx, 2 in Brooklyn, and really, again, focus our capital agencies to have a clear set of targets and projects that we're managing, but then also be value add, so we're helping them with navigating, whether it's, following up with a budget team, following up with utility companies, following up with the comptroller's office for whatever approvals in order to, again, shave off time. Lastly, this is the software piece. I can go through this pretty fast too. This is really about making sure that all the partners, especially those in this room, have a really kind of improved user experience as you're navigating city government for your various sort of permitting needs or activation needs or programming needs. So this is, I think, something that we are going to be particularly prioritizing in this coming year as the hardware and the capital projects are moving along. We really want to do what we can to make some concrete reforms on the software piece. We are really proud to, about a month ago now, announce the Trusted Partner programs with the bids. A lot of the bid districts take on a lot of liability for the spaces they manage, and they were getting caught up in a lot of different lawsuits and needed additional support from city government to be able to help them navigate that process and get out of that. They were finding themselves spending a lot of money and resources on lawyering and legal fees, as opposed to spending that money on maintenance, cleaning, activation in their spaces. So we convened a whole effort at City Hall to bring some real improvements and reforms that we believe will make the cost of doing business in terms of bids in our plazas a lot easier and smoother. And what I have found too in the last year and a half is that there is real sort of universal hunger and desire and energy to see improvements in this arena. This is a space that generally gets really great sort of headlines, generates really good press. And so again, this has been part of my sort of message and roadshow to other cities that when you have a team at City Hall dedicated and focused on this and really helping to cut red tape and bring about improvements and initiatives that, again, make public spaces better, it's a win-win from whether it's from comms or community building or relationships with other elected officials. It's a win-win all the way through. And since the start of the administration, we have transformed over 40 football fields or added 40 football fields worth of public space in all 5 boroughs. It is something I think that government, we can always do a better job, sharing our success, sharing our wins. And I think that's another thing that we're really focused on in this coming year is working with our agencies like the parks team who are doing incredible work, opening up new restrooms and playgrounds, parks, and to really help elevate and amplify the wins too and the work that our agencies are doing. So with that, this is our last slide. We launched our report today. We also launched a Public Realm website and the New York City Mayor's Office webpage. And I just want to end with thinking, again, thanking this community for your incredible, I think, generosity, your warmth, and your kindness. This work is not easy, as Jackson said. Sometimes it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But this community of advocates, of doers, both inside government and outside government, is really what binds us. And it's been absolutely incredible to see and meet this community that actually carries, all around the world as well than other cities. So on behalf of the Public Realm team at City Hall, I just want to thank again to all of you who are in this work, showing up every day. Sometimes it feels like, I say this, sometimes it feels like you're running top speed into a brick wall and you have to get up again the next day and do it again. And then once in a while, you'll have a breakthrough and that brick kind of punches through, and it's just the most invigorating feeling. And this community that's doing the work and learning about all the work that you're doing in your cities has been incredibly rewarding and energizing. So again, on behalf of the Public Realm team in the city of New York, in terms of being the first, thank you for your kindness, thank you for your support, thank you for your graciousness, and onward we go. Thank you.
Oh, you're in luck. I just got that. That's pretty good. Karaoke. Okay. Thanks so much, Ya-Ting. Similar to your brick metaphor, I always have one too that I say this work is like hitting your head against a brick wall, but every once in a while the wall moves. And I think that having you in this position, having folks like Jackson and his army of public space leaders on the outside, this wall is going to keep moving forward. So thank you for restoring dignity to the public realm. Now, we're here in New York City. This is a global city, and the global placemaking movement was actually started right here in this town. And we're very excited to have some of our global placemaking leaders here in the room with us today. Placemaking Mexico, Placemaking Ecuador, Placemaking Canada, Placemaking Earth. And so I'm going to bring up Ethan Kent, who's really stewarded and centered a lot of this global networking. And if also Guillermo and Daniela could come up, he'll be introducing Guillermo and then Daniela to speak to you.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Ya-Ting and Ryan for introducing this so amazingly. Yeah, this, as Ryan mentioned, this is kind of a return to New York for the placemaking movement to sort of reconnect with the roots. New York obviously has led public space innovation. And, around the world, people are copying us for better and for worse. And people want to support us too. And so it's wonderful. We're very lucky to have leadership and wisdom coming from so many parts of the country and the world to sort of guide this next evolution. I think we've sort of reached this incredible dream and this model leadership that Ya-Ting is embodying so well. How do we support her locally, globally? How do we make the most of this leadership, this model to support and inspire other cities as well. And I think that's what today's about. And then tomorrow is going to be more exciting with Tim on what's next for how do we reinvent government around public space and placemaking. But just a quick sort of history in a way. So Ryan mentioned that the placemaking movement kind of started here. Really, New York has launched many innovations, and it's launched communities of people, and it's launched us. I was born here. I'm lucky it created me. But most relevant for today, it launched the Project for Public Spaces. We have the founders of PPS here, and Steve Davies and Fred Kent, my father, and Kathy Madden, in the 70s, launched PPS out of the crisis of public spaces that New York was facing and that cities that were facing across the country at that time that has similarities to the crises that New York and San Francisco are facing today. And I was lucky to start working in PPS in the mid-90s, and in the early 2000s, I got to start something called the New York City Streets Renaissance campaign with open plans, where Jackson works and is doing incredible work building the public space community now. But that was my first work building a coalition of public space advocates that were kind of disparate, and led to our job was to get Iris Weinshall pushed out at the time, and who was Chuck Schumer's wife still, but she wasn't that passionate about that job. I don't think she was not. So it helped her hopefully, but and we envisioned the Public Plaza program. We worked with a dozen community-based organizations and bids, including Tim Tompkins of the Times Square Alliance, to create the Public Plaza program. And so we were lucky, and amazing people like David came in and figured out how to actually do this in the Bloomberg administration's incredible administrators. But it was this ecosystem of change makers that I think led to it, helped keep it going, helped prevent people from getting pushed out. There was efforts to get Jeanette Sedekhan pushed out because she was being so bold, and it was the advocates that came to our rescue at many points, Transportation Alternatives and Open Plans. Fred also was one of the founders of Transportation Alternatives in 1973, which is something I've forgotten. But that model of a campaign of building a coalition of advocates became a model for us. We worked in many cities across the country and around the world, and two of the leaders of the people are right here. That in the early 2010s, we started working in Mexico City and actually in Quito in 2015 to sort of train. Well, I'll tell both stories, but we launched the placemaking movement globally in 2013 at a conference in Detroit, and David and Tim were there, and I think many of you, there's something called the Placemaking Leadership Council. And one of the first people to sign up for it was Daniela Chacon, actually, who was a councilwoman in Quito at the time. And we wrote back and said, this is great, what can we do? And she then invited us to Quito to do a training for the public sector and private sector leaders in the city as they prepared to host the Habitat 3 conference, the biggest UN conference every 20 years to set the new urban agenda for cities. And she implemented many temporary public plazas and tactical urbanism projects, and sort of shifted the culture of the city as vice mayor of Quito at the time. And we'd started working with UN Habitat to develop a public space movement globally, to program there, to make public space a global cause. We got 10 principles of placemaking into the new urban agenda from a series of conferences that culminated at that Quito event. And now she runs a foundation that's supporting placemaking and other issues around the world. And she's brought here this week. We're very lucky by the Bloomberg Philanthropies to look at road safety issues and how public space can address that, among other safety issues in Quito that are happening. And then, of course, Guillermo, we started working with in Mexico City, and he brought us down to do trainings and workshops with the public space leadership there. There was a really innovative agency called Laboratorio for la Ciudad that was meant to build the connections between civil society and government, and they were hosting nonstop workshops on the roof of this building in the center of Mexico City, connecting all the advocates with city agencies and leaders. And Guillermo was doing demonstration placemaking projects around the city, building. There was lots of money for public space, lots of politicians loved it, but there was no money to build the process, the capacity to sustain public spaces. So Guillermo's really innovated that and led that work in Mexico City for a long time, and then helped me found PlacemakingX. 5 years after we started the placemaking movement in 2013, the goal was to have it self-organize and decentralize around the world. And so PlacemakingX is sort of an underarching organization just trying to connect and support the placemaking leaders to create these networks like Ryan's. But there's now there's more than 30 networks like PlacemakingUS with similarly zealous and fun leaders driving them around the world. And Guillermo's helped found that and also started Fundación Placemaking Mexico and Placemaking Latino America that's had conferences every year in different parts of Latin America, gathering an incredibly vibrant community of placemakers there. This year it's in Bogota and Medellin. So with that, I want to introduce these two, and we'll come back to how this is really how New York is an anchor to this global movement, this global conversation. The strength of our work and connections here is foundational to all of our work globally. And now in this, where it's gone recently is an opportunity to take that story and that model to a new scale as well. So this is looking forward to being with you all for the 4 days, and each one of the people here have incredible wisdom to share. So Guillermo.
No, so thank you guys for inviting me here. Actually, I wrote that speech because I knew I had a red-eye flight and my English a little bit rusty the first hours, so I just arrived this morning. And also because I want to respect your time, so I measure myself and it's 4 minutes. Thank you for the introduction, Ethan. I'm really honored to stand here before you as a board member of PlacemakingX and also founding director of the Placemaking Mexico Foundation. Over the past decade, I have dedicated my career to the transformation power of placemaking in Mexico, with a fantastic team of people that in my office, and we have developed over 500 projects for 500 communities all over Mexico in all our 32 states. Our work do not stop in Mexico. We have also impacted 7 countries across Latin America, including Ecuador, with great friends. But also we travel with PlacemakingX to Thailand, developing their public space program. And also one of my big wins of last year, I traveled to Cuba, and we implemented a program focused on democratic tools for communities engagement in public space. Also with PlacemakingUS, we have done amazing cross-border programs, bridging communities from Tijuana to San Diego, to El Paso, to Juarez. These initiatives aim to create understanding and reality checks for people. We also train Spanish-speaking communities in California with Ryan and Madeleine on placemaking tools. And these workers often set up the tables and chairs in public space. But now they realize their work is not just mechanical task, but they are giving others the power to shape their cities. And at Placemaking, we believe in the power of collaboration. We work closely with communities, governments, and businesses to co-produce and co-manage these places, ensuring they are maintained and continuously improved by those who use them daily. Our approach in Mexico is not just about building parks. It's about fostering a sense of belonging and community, transforming public spaces into real places where social life happens, where people connect, share their experience, and they create real memories. Public spaces and places are often, and this happens also in Spanish as well, used interchangeably, but carrying really distinct meanings for us. Public spaces such as parks, squares, and streets are really accessible to everyone. However, they only become a place when they foster a real sense of belonging and community. Our approach involves working closely with the community to build and co-own their places. This confirms that the community understands its role as guardians of these places, promoting sustainable local development. And it's not a teacher-student approach we follow, but a process to respect and co-produce their places. We focus in our work on creating places that reflect the needs and desires of the community. This is real, and I call it in Spanish like this, urbanism for the living, addressing the here and the now. In Mexico, for example, last year we built 50 places for early childhood in 16 months. And really taking participatory seriously. We engage really methodically on this, and flexibility and multi-use for us are crucial, so that these places can evolve in the community and as the community change. Some critics for us comment on the speed of our projects. But this is what I say, but kids grow faster than actual our plans. I say like kid clothes. Public spaces must adapt as fast as we do for children. Rather than these long-lasting structures, we really prioritize our work in temporary needs and desires. The community's placemaking activities express these needs, creating places that evolve with them. And this is a matter of resilience. For example, in the pandemic, show that our city, my city, adapted very fast with this rapid implementation of parklets in Mexico City, allowing a really fast recovery for the economy. With just paint and planters, and actually no permits, just a simple notice, and for us, this flexibility was freedom. Issues like insurances, permits, red tape, for us in Mexico are secondary actually to our primary goal, to fostering community where everyone cares for each other. This approach has promoted a sense of responsibility and commitment within the community. And simplifying bureaucracy and promoting a shared responsibility is crucial for us. And as we have shown, this approach has actually had a higher return of investment to our partners. While in the US has made really significant strides in infrastructure compared to Mexico and individual rights, the cities, in my opinion, have lost something vital. The loneliness and homogeneity prevails in American cities and in global cities right now. Many seriously look the same for me. Traveling from Russia to the middle of Russia in Kazan to Cuba, a lot of places and a lot of public spaces really look the same. And the losing of their unique identity, it's something I really see globally. In placemaking, we hope to inspire and shift towards a more community-central values, where mutual care and responsibility really drives authenticity and sustainable development. New York City, as we discuss these key issues, I really urge to reflect on New York City as a global example. All eyes are on you. I know a lot of colleagues of me that are connected right now to this streaming, and they're really seeing what you are doing. And there's also an immense value for you to see what others are doing around the world through your example. As a follow-up action for me is to learn from the Public Realm, this roundtable, and draft a paper for in Spanish, in my language, to take to the new officials that are being elected and re-elected in my country, and show them that it's possible to start a revolution towards public spaces. Thank you. Yes, and I'll introduce a friend, a colleague, and someone I admire a lot. This is Daniela Chacon, Vice Mayor of Quito, and also a great partner. And we were just speaking that a group of her applied to a grant that we worked together, and was for early childhood, and they did some beautiful gardening, a garden that they could smell, the kids could smell, right? Like, I'm so happy to listen that, and I'm happy to visit you soon in Quito. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I think this is for sitting here, right? I think I'm going to use it. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to talk to you here today. And I'm very, very thankful for Ethan, because this is why I'm here. And I just wanted to complement the story a little bit, just really quickly. You know, I was elected vice mayor back in 2014. I was 32 years old. And I just knew that we were not doing public spaces very well in the city. I just didn't know exactly what needed to be done. I just knew that we needed to work with the community. And I started Googling information, and I found a project for public spaces and placemaking and Ethan, and I just wrote to them and they're like, hey, you guys want to come to Quito and teach us something? And they were like, yeah. And that's how it all started. So I'm really excited to be here. So after 5 years of being in government, to be honest with you, I get a little bit tired. And I was I was a politician, so that's more tiring. And so, but with all the learning, I decided to create Tandem. Tandem is a Latin word that means together. And so this is what we do. Government, unfortunately, speaks another language completely different than the communities and the cities they serve. And so what we try to do is we build the bridges of not only dialogue and understanding, but collaborative action, so that we can all work together to address actual people's needs. And so we've been working in Ecuador. That's my country, and we're trying to work in most of the cities in our country, and trying to bring a different perspective and view of what can be done on public spaces throughout the country. And I think the philosophy, it's very important, because what we're trying to do is we know and understand that cities are at the forefront of creating or fighting inequality. Inequality is one of the biggest problems we have in our country and in the world. And so when we understand that cities can fight inequality and that public spaces actually can become a very strong tool to understand how can we share a space wherever we come from, even if you have a lot of money or not, but the public space is the area where you encounter each other, and when you can talk to each other and you can recognize each other and create a community sense. So, and we work with local governments especially, because that's the power of change in our view. And we work a lot with community grassroots organizers, neighborhood leaders, so that we can help them have the tools to navigate government, but also to push for changes. Because sometimes we feel like, it is going to be too difficult. There are so many things that need to be done, and you just see that when you presented that, organigram, I don't know how to say that in English. Yeah, and a citizen looks at that and is like, oh my God, how can I get anything done here? So for sure, we in Ecuador we have citizen participation it's a recognized human right, and we also have the right to the city. We have it in our constitution. We have recognized the right to the city, and so that also gives us a lot of legal tools for citizens to use and to demand responses from their governments. But they just need how to do it, and be effective on it, so that they don't get tired of all of the work that it entails sometimes. And I think one of the things that is very important to us as well is human rights and gender and inclusion. Many of our spaces have been thought by men and for men, and a specific type of men, which does not include diversity of men, and does not include us women, and doesn't include children. And so for us, it's very important that community and the governments understand that when you are planning a space, when you're planning a policy, that it is going to affect completely different to a woman, to a man, to a child. And so if you understand that need from the beginning, and then you can actually close the inequality gap. So our methodology that we've been creating, and it's kind of like in a constant change, because every time we go to a new city or we go to a new place, we learn something different. And I think one of the most important things about this movement is that whether you are in local government or you are an activist, you are willing to learn, and you are willing to know that the community is going to show you something, that is going to teach you something, but then also you as a community leader understand that public officers can also teach you something. And so what we always do is we gather data, but not only, you know, quantitative and qualitative when we can, of course, but especially local knowledge, you know. How are people doing things? How are they viewing the spaces? What are their thoughts about it? And only once we've gathered that data and that information, we conceptualize the project. Not before. We don't go with a, you know, pre-planned idea. Of course, you always have kind of like idea of what you want to do. But having an open mind means that once you've gathered the information and you've really understood what's going on, then you conceptualize the intervention that you want to do, and then, you know, we do a lot of capacity building, training, so that you're able to use all of the tools to transform your space or to transform your city or the policy that you're pushing for. And then we talk about consciousness in terms of, you know, once you've understood your space, the things that are going on, the things that you need to change, and you get, you know, the capacities strengthened so that you can use your legal framework and you can use, you know, your organizing capacities to push for the change that you want to see in your community, is kind of like an aha moment. You know, you're like, oh my God, I can do this. You know, as a community, we can work together and change this, whether it's a small thing or a bigger thing, but usually the smaller things, you know, build one upon another, and then once you've got kind of like this consciousness and this aha moment, then we start doing the participation and the engagement process, you know, how to use all of the tools and the legal tools and the rights that you have as a citizen so that you can push for those changes, and you get, you know, as a community empowered in that process, and you understand that the government, you know, looking back to the Carta Magna and the introduction Ryan gave us at the beginning, yeah, the government is there for you, not the other way around. And so what we do through the process is also create a process of advocacy to create long-lasting impact. And one of the things that we always focus on is in the impact is a self-impact, is mean how you get changed through the process, because you as a person get changed through the process, and I think you become a better person, because, you know, you're open and willing to learn from others, and so you become a better person, and then the community is, you know, getting better organized, and they're working together and they're collaborating, and then of course you're trying to change your government, and sometimes we can do it, sometimes it's much more difficult, but it's part of the process. And so, but in the end, what we're looking to do is to strengthen our democracy. That's the end, because we're really worried that we are trusting less in democracy, and that means that our rights are in danger. And so for us, it's very important that through this process, we build trust, so that you can trust back your government and you can work together. And so just showing a couple of things that we've done in the Amazon. This was a bridge that was very insecure for women. We focus a lot of interventions with gender perspective and work with women groups. And then, you know, the things that we're always doing is engaging the community, and we have this word in Quechua, which is the native language in Ecuador. It's called Minga. And La Minga is a concept of community working together to obtain benefits for the community. And so when you organize a Minga, you go out there to your park, you go out there to your street, and you clean together, and you identify what are the strengths of your block, and then you all work together to make it better. And so we use a lot of Minga for the intervention. So it's really interesting because, you know, of course the public works agency does their thing, but then the community is actually building the things. And that just creates a sense of empowerment and sustainability of the interventions. And then one of the things that we're focusing a lot lately, because of the security crisis that Ecuador is facing because of drug trafficking, is that we are trying to reclaim back our public spaces through a security lenses, because I mean, unfortunately, but seen as an opportunity, government and local governments are listening much more now of the importance of public spaces in terms of reclaiming safe and security in the cities. And so we're using that to push for interventions, tactical urbanism and others in cities, and looking into the security and safety issue and trying to, show that if the spaces are occupied and they're occupied with the things that people want to, not with the things somebody in some agency thought they would want, then you can actually see some changes. And we've actually been measuring these interventions because we want to show them, kind of like something that can be replicated throughout the country. And so the local governments understand that fighting insecurity is not a police issue. Of course, it is a police issue, but that's just one part of it. The bigger part of it is that space is reclaimed for you, and then you can push the opportunity for the committing of the crimes out of your public space. And so we're really excited to some of the things that we've been doing in Quito and in other cities in the country, just taking spaces that were abandoned and not being used and transforming them with the community so that they can be used and reclaimed, and then trying to include different perspectives. And I'm just going to close with that. We got these funds from the PlacemakingX movement to create a park of, I don't know how to say this in English, but it's kind of like a smelling park. Because we've, in a good way, yes, good smells, flowers, and so the park was designed by kids. And then they said that they wanted the park to smell very good because it didn't smell good before, and that was like the main issue for them. Like, I want the park to smell good. Okay, let's do this. And so we created kind of like this smell park that you go throughout, and then you have different smells, and the kids love it. So trying always to see what other things that can be done without necessarily thinking that it's just kind of like a recipe. Sometimes it would seem that it's a recipe, but the recipe always changes. The ingredients always change. And so we're trying to always be open to, put on those different ingredients that people want so that we can actually reclaim the spaces for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for reminding us that we're not just making these changes for our neighborhood or our city, but these are changes we're making for our country and our world. Through Ethan, we've been participating in events with the United Nations and in maybe 20 countries around the world. And it's amazing to me because before that, I always thought the UN was about armament agreements and non-state actors and big stuff like that. But a big piece of this is actually just the planting of a pollinator garden 1 billion times over, or making your neighborhood more walkable, or adding and spending time in parks. And so I love that we could have these voices from Latin America, where I think they're very advanced at co-creating with community, because a lot of the red tape and a lot of the requirement of things being so expensive are not there. They prioritize immediacy, they prioritize getting it done together, and it's a real roadmap for us. And that work is also being reflected here in New York City since the pandemic and sort of the opening of our streets for co-production. And it's a real honor to have a practitioner in the streets of New York talk to you next and bring up Jim Burke from the 34th Avenue Open Streets Project to tell you how that's been going. And
good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? I don't have an actual slideshow, but I do have a video of a distillation of 4 years of being out there every single day. We have New York City's largest open street. It's 26 blocks. It's 1.3 miles. It's 365 days a year. In the warmer months, we have 7 days a week programming. Even in the colder months, we have 4 days a week programming. We have organized bike rides, organized walks. We run a food pantry, clothing distribution. We have every kind of exercise you can imagine. And this all started, the city had a pilot, a 2-block long pilot, staffed by police officers on each corner. And after a couple weeks, they said it was an expensive failure, and they closed the open street. And it looked like basically a crime scene, so you had police on the different corners, so everybody kind of walked around the open street and avoided it, because it kind of looked like a checkpoint or something, maybe something bad happened there. So you'll see when we get the video up, that we got together, got some orange vests and a sandwich board, and it said, "For emergency vehicles only, calles abiertas." And that's how we opened our street. And we wanted to show the city it didn't have to be a big police endeavor. It could be led by the community. And we, right after this, we actually called from all the different nonprofits. We asked everybody, we need volunteers, because we have to open and close these streets every single morning and every single evening. And so we need volunteers from the community. So basically, every single morning, we had different people on different blocks bring out the barricades, take away the barricades, with no police involvement at all. And one of the things that did is it gave a real community ownership to the project. And so if you move the barricade, I got up at 7 this morning to put that barricade out there. Could you please put it back? And so these were neighbors talking to neighbors. And then the other thing we did is we wanted to make sure that we had activity. We wanted to, when I grew up in the Bronx, and I spent summers in Rockaway, and we owned the streets. We were out in the streets every single day. And someone would scream car, we'd move aside when we finished the particular play. And we wanted to give that back. I tell the story like, when I see my mom who's 80 years old, she'll run across the street not to inconvenience a car, because that's what we've become in the last 10, 20 years. We've ceded, and we think like they're more important. I'm like, Mom, you're 80 years old, take your time. So we needed to show that you could be in the street. But the other thing we wanted to show was the drivers who may have a few seconds of delay or be slightly inconvenienced because they couldn't drive down as a thoroughfare. They had to drive on a different street. We wanted to show them that it was worth it, right? Like, this is fun. Like, there's a reason that you're being slightly inconvenienced, and that means that you can walk to school, that you can hop on a bicycle. You'll see so many young kids learning how to ride that are about this big. You'll see people with hair grayer and whiter than mine that you don't see in other areas of the city riding their bicycle for the first time in a long time. This is the mayor. The mayor came to visit us. But we every single day we have something going on the open street, and the idea was to make this an outdoor community center, a public square, and a micromobility corridor all in one, so that we could have our cultural celebrations. And so it was interesting that we have people from Mexico and Ecuador, because that's some of our biggest populations. We have Ecuadorians, Colombians. Jackson Heights has 167 languages spoken. So we have cultural events from Tibet, and these are all run by the community. And the wonderful thing is that you can enjoy all of these events right outside in the street. Before, you'd have to like sheepishly go to a community center, the second floor. Maybe you didn't really feel comfortable. Here, you're like, come on in. And like little kids say, I'm from Tibet, and they'll spit facts and tell you all about their country and invite you and tell you all the wonderful things we do. There's lots of other like just organic things that's happened. The other thing that we have is we have 7,000 kids that use this to go back and forth to school safely every single day. We have 4 schools directly on the corridor and 3 a little off. So people can walk and bike to school themselves. This is a Martin Luther King celebration. The other thing, there's so many wonderful things that we can do. The gentleman, this is our food and clothing distribution. Right now, we're more concentrating on clothing, but during the pandemic, we had between 1,500 and 2,000 people line up for food every single Monday. This is Honk. This is a different band from New Orleans. We also try to bring lots of different culture when we can. So we've had Off-Broadway there. We've had the circus come. We've had, this is a holy celebration. So we have just every single cultural celebration. We have, there's lots of people who, this is, of course, Zumba, which is a perennial popular. Right now, what's really super popular is our cumbia sonadera, which is a Mexican, although my partner's Colombian, he says it's really Colombian originally. But this really hits a really wonderful segment because these are 20-year-olds, and usually, but when you get to high school in the 20s, we're not cool enough because we have the seniors, we have the little kids, but this is really nice to see that we're really hitting all age brackets. When you see the races, this is an adult race, but we have kids races too. Our judges are often, cheerleaders are 80-year-old women who have pom-poms and scream us to the finish line and help us with prizes. But you see, this is just back and forth. If you come any day between 2 and 3, you can witness this for yourself. And this is my favorite, this is where I'll end here. This is my favorite thing. We had nothing to do this. This is organic. These are people who are doing their dance. These are people who are doing soccer. And these are people who are doing volleyball. And the 34th Avenue Open Streets had nothing to do with it. This is organically, people are taking over the streets. And that's my dream, and that makes me really happy. So I'll end there. Thank you.
Amazing. And we're going to get the chance on Saturday to go visit Jim on the street and start to see a little more. You know, we go to cities all over the country and they say they have an open streets program, and I go, no, you don't. You need to see what's going on here, and it's really, really amazing. That looks like our past and our future. So thank you for being the community partner who makes that all happen. We went to Davos, the World Economic Forum, a few years ago, and they made us feel pretty old school because they're out there talking about NFTs and crypto, and hey, there's a lot of money to make in this apocalypse, let me tell you. And we were representing ideas like kids playing in the street and getting to know your neighbor. And so that's why I think that this next speaker is really important and exciting because they're using some of the most high-tech tools out there to underpin and expose why this is so successful and what you're actually doing for the human body and the human organism when you're doing these simply joyous things. So I'm going to bring up Abigail from the Happy Institute, or from Happy, I guess it is. Yeah. And I saw you have like 3,000 slides, so you're not going to use all of them, or you're a fast talker too, like me, I know.
Talker, and we don't need to look at every single slide. I just want to give folks a sense of what this tech can do. Awesome. Thank you. Just forward. Well, when you press that. Cool. Well, good morning, everyone. My name's Abigail Sekeli, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the executive director for the Human Architecture and Planning Institute. We're a nonprofit based out of Boston, but I'm actually from Scranton, so there's a little bit of Jane Jacobs love deep in my heart to be here today. So I want to talk to you about these high-tech tools that are being used by marketing and advertising companies, but we have a tremendous opportunity to use them when looking at design as well, to better understand the human biological and cognitive responses to what we see around us every day. What you're seeing here is a compared image of what we evolved in, nature. We are animals. This is what we have seen for 40,000 years. To our far side over there, you see a very contemporary building that could literally exist anywhere in the world. This is a photograph from Nikolai Oleg, who is a New York Times photographer who has some really fun quizzes that you can take online that measure, you can guess where you think these sort of placeless facades are. But anyway, 95% of our brain activity happens beyond our conscious awareness. Because we're animals, we need to immediately know what's happening in our surroundings because we need to discern whether something is a threat or not a threat. Now I'm showing you some high-tech, eye-tracked version of the previous image that we saw. we showed 60 people all over the world this image for 12 seconds. What you see here is a non-directed attention metric. So this is called a heat map. Where it's glowing red is where the most attention is paid. Yellow is slightly less attention. Green, slightly less. And where there's no pigment, there was almost no attention. We see here that the human brain non-consciously looks at plants and fractal-like qualities of nature more than we look at these repeated parallel lines. There's a professor based out of the UK, his name is Arnold Wilkins, who has done incredible research about how the human body is stressed by these repeat parallel lines. So think about our cities and how we're developing them all around us. Vision happens in two phases. So this is important to understand because we are animals. We need to understand this animal nature. Marketing companies are capitalizing on this to sell us products, but designers aren't using the same tech to understand where we find the front door in a school or in a hospital or how we navigate on a subway platform. So the first 200 milliseconds that we see something is non-conscious. We look at the world the same way that a monkey does. So we're not very separate from our animal ancestors and relatives. This is an image from the National Civic Arts Society. In 2020, they conducted a Harris poll surveying 2,000 Americans and found that 72% of Americans, regardless of their age, gender, socioeconomic status, or political party, preferred traditional architecture to modern architecture. My team at the Happy conducted a biometric study using the same pairs of images to find out what the non-conscious response was. We knew what people consciously chose, but what does this mean for a democratic America, and what does this mean for animals, right? We're humans designing human habitat. We should understand how humans work. This is the same eye-tracked situation where we see that the architectural language here on this building hints at where the front door is, whereas the building on the far side, these are both civic buildings. This is in Toledo, Ohio, and this building is in Ogden, Utah. The front door is almost impossible to find. If you were just walking down the street, do you walk to this short side? Do you walk to the long side? We have intuition, but we can actually measure how much more simple experiences for navigation might be with this tech. So to break it down, Daniela, you talked about dwell time, which is really exciting, but we're talking about a different vision metric here. So we have that physical amount of time you're dwelling in the space, but what happens non-consciously is a quicker attachment. You're more likely to look at the traditional building than the modern building. So if we're looking at different pieces of design, I'm not saying everything needs to be traditional, but it's just what are the pieces of the architectural language, tectonically, material-wise, that direct our experience. And we know that if we see something more quickly, we're more likely to react to it. Again, we see 72% of people consciously chose the building on the right to the building on the left. The biometrics prove the same story. If you scan this QR code, you'll have access to a Journal of Applied Sciences paper that my team had published at the beginning of November last year that details all of these metrics, and there's a ton of science, and I'm happy to talk about that later with folks. I'm an architect, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I'm very concerned with how places make us feel, and that's how I sort of started down this pathway. This is a video, so it won't play on a PDF, but you start to understand some of the raw data as how we generate the heat maps. This is a quote from my colleague. He's a neuroscientist living in Greece. His name is Alexandros Lavdas. And it's important to understand biometrics as applied to design because we're able to gather objective data on issues that were previously considered subjective. So this is a really powerful tool for public space when we think about bringing people together. What are the commonalities? We are much more similar than we are different. So this is a really great tool for bridging those inequities that we currently experience in politics and in the world around us. This is a great project that we had the opportunity to participate in at the end of last spring, or the end of last summer rather, in Chelsea, Massachusetts, which is just outside of Boston. We were asked to redesign a bus station. This is the Department of Public Works team that did all of the wonderful work. We had some incredible partners that I've listed there, including La Colaborativa, which was an after-school group that was on the same block. So the students were actually the kids ages 13 to 18 who came to paint the flowers that you see, and they installed the flower boxes that you'll see when I share some more photographs. But it's really about that community engagement and bringing people science and also good feelings and bringing it all together to tell a story. You see the image on the right, which is the original bus shelter we were tasked with redesigning. This project didn't have a tremendous budget, didn't have a tremendous timeline, but what were some small interventions that we could measure the impact of? So we changed the public space. We added these fractal-like colors onto the street, onto the sidewalk, and onto the platform, because we know through science that if we see bright colors, we're more likely to slow down. So this was reducing some of the traffic issues in the area. Additionally, we were able to remove a parking space. So previously, folks who were standing in this bus shelter without a bench had to walk into the street past a parked car to look if the bus was coming. That's not good. We can't have that in healthy, safe spaces. So we added a bench, we got rid of the parking space, and we added this modular Zikla platform. So that way folks who are taking the bus can walk straight onto the bus instead of stepping down into the street if they have to. This is an algorithm-based software called visual attention software. It's by 3M, and this is 92% as accurate as live data tracking. So this is what they call a spell check for design. This is what advertisers use to measure the impacts of their Amazon logo if you're gonna press the buy button. But it's kind of curious when we look at this applied to design, because we see how our vision pattern changes when we're experiencing different stimuli in our environment. Again, our attention drives our conscious awareness, so if we better understand these non-conscious cues, we can have healthier, happier spaces. Again, you can see here how we basically avoid the bus stop. There's really not any sort of engagement, but when we add these different trees that are also helping with the climate crisis, we're encouraging people to take the bus, helping with the climate crisis. All of this happens by small cues. And this is important to understand because we think, therefore we are is not true. We're actually feeling creatures. And I'm showing you this image again because we have these attention-based heat maps, which are all very important when understanding that non-conscious experience, but we're also able to look at the emotional experience through the same lens. We have all of these wonderful muscles in our face that correspond to different sensations happening non-consciously. And this is an aggregate of all of those different folks who experience joy while looking at this image. We showed them the same image as this last slide. This was generated using the same software. It's called iMotions Online. And we generate a quick study, post it online, and anyone with a laptop with a webcam can participate. So you don't have to speak the same language. You don't have to be in the same city. Our visual language is all the same as human beings. So it's important to understand that we can actually measure the impact of joy in the public realm. So you can see this comparison here where the attention is, and it's kind of funny that the joy coloring kind of looks like a smiley face. I don't know if you see that, but we can start to actually look at this and measure this and advocate for our communities using this new lens. Again, we're just seeing how the attention changes. So if you're a young child who doesn't speak English, or you are someone who is just visiting, you see the flowers, you see the big word Chelsea, that's your stop. Get off the bus, you're home. This is also a video that's showing the live data points. We can use videos, we can use still images, and parse the information from there. This is a screen grab of that live data collection. So these little bubbles at the top of the screen are bopping around. Those are all of the eye fixations. And you can see the red glowing on top of the bench. And that's where there's a spike in engagement, positive reaction, and joy. Again, these are just similar metrics telling the same story, and I'm happy to unpack this further with folks. But it's interesting, we can measure how these positive responses are not just our intuition. We can have people consciously telling us that they like something, but we can also prove that. And what we can see there is that a reduced cortisol level in our bodies. We're not going to be as stressed out, which means we'll have higher longevity, we'll be happier, and this will lead to positive ripples in our lives. This is a great graphic. Look at all of the attention on the image on the right with that redesigned bench. What a more inviting place to be. you know. So this is a great quote that I'll just wrap up with. This is from Nadine Burke-Harris. When you know the mechanism, you can use that understanding in countless ways to drastically improve the human condition. That is how you spark a revolution. And I think that's what we're kind of doing here today. That's what this new lens when it comes to public space is all about. We're bringing more people in, we're starting conversations, and we're building from the ground up. So I'm really excited to grow all of this with you. If you want to participate in an eye tracking study to sort of see what it's like, you scan this QR code at the very top. My email is here, our blog with plenty of resources is also here, and the Happy website. Please get in touch with me and let's talk. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Abigail, for your important work. We saw Abigail and her partner, Ann Sussman, speak at a conference, and then we found ourselves telling like every single person we encountered after it about this stuff. So we thought, wow, this really is amazing to have that backup, because we all feel the joy of the work we're doing, but there's actually a science behind it, and that's another important tool to bring to those evidence-based conversations as we advocate for more and more of this. Speaking of which, our last speaker for the morning, Dorian, I bet you didn't know you were doing all that cool science stuff when you're putting art on all those public projects in Atlanta, but that is why the work that you're doing is so important as new infrastructure comes online and you adorn it with art and involve communities. So let's bring you down here to talk a little bit about the incredible and unique office at the Atlanta City Design Studio that you occupy.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be almost back home. I'm actually from New Jersey, so this is a kind of a nice full circle moment for me. So I am the Public Art Project Manager for the City of Atlanta, Department of City Planning. I'm housed in what's called the Atlanta City Studio. And we are a pop-up studio that travels around the city of Atlanta to focus our time and attention on a particular part of that city. We will continue to do work elsewhere, but our focus is on wherever we land. Right now, we happen to be in downtown Atlanta. This is actually our previous space. It just looks much cooler than our current space. So a friend of mine, Eric Mack, actually painted that mural out there. So that's what we do. Tim Keene, who was our former commissioner, this was his brainchild, and it's been really successful for us. This is the Atlanta City Design book, also a brainchild of Tim Keene. Google this book. You can get it in PDF form online. It has become part of our city charter. It kind of encompasses the values and the vision for the city. And Atlanta is trying to grow its residents and trying to lessen the traffic that we're all known for, unfortunately. So I'm going to just run through some previous projects. Now, the design studio focuses on a lot more than what I do. I kind of bring the party to the infrastructure, and I also use the arts for education about public space. So one of the projects we did is in a neighborhood called English Avenue. Also, I don't think it's still called this, but it was formerly called the Bluffs. It was kind of where people in and around the city went and got their heroin. It was a really tough neighborhood. When I started working there 6 years ago, I was offered heroin several times. Ended up kind of befriending everyone and anyone in the neighborhood just to kind of ease tensions when I was there, because I was a foreign face. But this is a church structure that's in that neighborhood. It has no ceiling, no floor. You can see the grass. That's the baptismal wall there. So no ceiling, no floor. It had nothing in the windows. I had them covered because I wanted to load in equipment when I was programming there. So I partnered with an organization called Dashboard, who brought in an organization called Tila Studios. We worked with the community to make those canvases on the top right. Another artist decorated the baptismal wall. We threw a big party in there that had the children's programming that you see on the left. This is going to be full circle because I'm going to show you what we're going to do there in the future. So we kind of did this look at kind of lessons learned during this process. This is the first time Atlanta had really kind of partnered with community advocates to do work. That property is private, but he's using it for public good. He doesn't charge people to go in that space. So anyway, these are kind of some lessons that we learned during the process. Another thing I do is, like I said, I use the arts to educate. Is Mike Lydon in the room? He's here virtually. Okay. So his team is ultimately who the city of Atlanta worked with to create a shared street in part of Peachtree Street. So if you know anything about Atlanta, Peachtree Street is the street. There are several streets named Peachtree, but this is the main one in downtown Atlanta. When I first started working at Atlanta City Studio, they were doing the planning work for Peachtree. So I pulled together an art exhibit with plein air artists who painted on the street, photographers who took pictures on the street, and I went to our Atlanta History Center and got old photos of the mansions that used to line Peachtree Street, and I put them in the same exhibit with illustratives of what the street could look like if we made it a shared street. The great thing about this was the programming that we were able to house because we had this exhibit. So we did panel sessions, we did a book club. So the studio is known for having a monthly book club, and we read books on design. We were also known for something called Design Over Donuts, where we would bring various folks who are doing projects around the city to kind of talk to the public about their design work. So it was just kind of a place for people to gather to do that. This is another project where I used art to talk about something happening in the public realm. This is the artist Jose Awu. He wanted to do something that recognized the unhoused population. That location where we are had a lot of unhoused people there. There was, again, a lot of drug trafficking in that area. So he partnered with an unhoused organization and created these photos of people he was able to interact with. And then if you look on the right, those are QR codes, and you could get video of people he spoke with. This is a street in between, so the video faced the street, the artwork faced the sidewalk. And again, lots of programming here, a panel. Well, this is the opening, and that opening scene of my presentation was a band that walked down the street. There were 6 different locations of these 6-foot by 6-foot panels, and the band walked down the street and kind of bowed down to each one of these unhoused people. It was kind of a surprise for the folks who attended the opening. Then I had a panel on unhoused folks. I had a book club, again, called Housing First, and one of the authors actually joined us for that book club meeting. Okay, so projects in the pipeline. Again, I'm doing another art exhibit, Memento Mori. It means remember you must die. This is me working with folks in our historic preservation team, someone who focuses specifically on cemeteries, which is also part of our public realm that we kind of don't deal with a lot. But I'm pulling together painters, photographers, installation artists, and sculptors who do work to kind of represent death and dying and honoring that. And so in these next set of slides, I'm kind of showing the partnerships that the partners that I'm working with in these projects. So the Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs, which is actually where I come from before I got this job, and our Historic Preservation Studio. And again, you see the programming. So we're gonna have an artist panel. We're gonna have a panel that talks about cemeteries. I'm really excited about Dr. Rourke because we would like to start doing art and culture planning in cemeteries in the city. And we're getting a lot of pushback from legal. So I want this woman to talk to our legal and talk to our folks about how this can be done. It is being done around the country. Don't be scared. They're all dead already. I am working with the Atlanta Design Festival, which is, and you guys have this as well. It's in several major cities in the city and internationally. And I'm creating a shared street, again in downtown Atlanta, during their next festival. And so this is a bit about the Atlanta Design Festival. This is the program we want to have. So I didn't write the exact name down, but the 34th Street Initiative, that's kind of what I want to do, but just for a weekend, just so Atlanta can see what this can be. We have the World Cup coming to Atlanta, and so we are looking at how we can best program shared streets throughout the city to activate it with all the guests we're getting ready to have. So this is going to be kind of a pilot for that. So this is full circle back to that English Avenue neighborhood. This is a great drone shot we just got of the area. So this is the church over here with no ceiling. Pay attention to this crosswalk over here and this cement pad here. And there's one other bus shelter that we're working on that's not actually in here. So these are some projects that are going to happen at that intersection. So one of the things that is on the, I get my directions mixed up, southwest corner, I believe it is what they call the Yellow Store. And this store is significant in the neighborhood. It's been family owned until about 5 years ago. Gladys Knight and the Pips used to rehearse in here. There was a record store in here, and most importantly for the community, the first floor was always a place where they could either purchase food or the woman that owned the building used to give food away. So these blue hands are representative of her giving food away in that mural. We hired an artist who designed what these crosswalks are going to be, and that's what they will look like. We're not going to have the community paint them because we want them to last. So we're using MMA paint for those. This is the bus shelter, which I'm really excited about. It is going to be on that pad there that right now just has a semi-seat. It will have shelter. I didn't include this in it, but at night there are lights kind of housed in the shells at the top. And it's going to kind of face downward and create really cool shadows. And then this is the existing bus shelter that we're going to add this beautiful little girl's face to. Again, these are the partners that I'm working with. And the programming, once that's done, I just found everywhere I could say we're going to just throw a big party. Because we've been working in this neighborhood for many years. It's a challenged neighborhood. It's challenging to work in the neighborhood, so we're just gonna celebrate the work. Okay, this last project is really interesting. It's called Atlanta to the Atlantic. So believe it or not, there is water in Atlanta. It has been built over and ignored and polluted. It is, the South River is what I'm referring to in this case. It is the 4th most polluted river in the country. I am partnering with Flux Projects. They are known for their environmental public artwork in and around Atlanta. Ann Dennington runs this organization. Again, I encourage you to Google this organization, Google her. She does really amazing work. There are two women who are using that little vessel she's in, which honestly looked like corrugated cardboard with a plastic coating. Like, it's really light and it's really, I wouldn't do it. Anyway, two of them, one from New York, one from Atlanta, are traveling for 6 weeks from Southeast Atlanta to the Atlantic Ocean in that boat. So I also worked with Camp Best Friends, which is a camp that the city runs every summer, to do an educational component for this journey. I hired someone to create the curriculum. Between me and Flux Projects, we got that part done. And she hired an instructor who is right now teaching the kids about water and their environment, about the importance of water, about the South River. Once they finish their journey, they are going to create 3 different public art installations in Southeast Atlanta, in close proximity to where the waterways are. The places where this is an environmentally challenged place, and people are not aware of the water, and like I said, the water is very polluted. Again, these are all of the partnerships that are making this project happen. If you go to Twitch and put it Atlanta to the Atlantic, you can see live streaming of their journey. It's pretty amazing. And I did it. It's not, we knew I had a lot of slides.
Folks, she came all the way to Atlanta, and you know what? You've been to that airport. That is we really appreciate you showing up for us. I'm just gonna do a little bit to get us out the door here. So basically, folks, today was pretty brilliantly curated, if you ask me. I happen to be the curator, though, so I don't know. We heard some really important messages. You know, we heard about that we're entering a new era of city making where we're doing this together. It's not they and what are they going to do for us. The pandemic taught us nobody's coming. It's about us doing this together. We're centering ourselves and each other in the work. We heard about the importance of organizing, what Jackson's been doing, the need for internal champions. These are big, complicated machines and systems, and we need that internal machinery spinning as fast as it can, like from Ya-Ting. We learned from our Latin American friends the beautiful way that you can work with community, trust community, and that when community actually owns a space, they care for it and they feel that sense of belonging, which is that top of that Maslow pyramid that we all need to get to in our lives. We heard from Jim Burke that that's possible right here on the streets of New York City. The amazing miracle that has happened there, unfortunately, cities have regressed from that moment where the rules have slapped back up, gotten tougher, and the possibilities of more places like that are harder than they were the day that was founded. So we so appreciate you being our little Statue of Liberty, holding your light up for as long as it can stand so more places can become like you. And from Abby, that there's actually evidence and science backing this up. It doesn't just feel good, look good, and the domain of the weird. This is really the domain of the human, and we're restoring habitat. And then thank you to Dorian for showing us that arts and culture is not a +1 at the table. It is the actual tool that we're using to rehumanize and reacquaint ourselves to each other. I'm going to give you guys a second to, if you haven't already gotten on the free Wi-Fi, it's like Pratt Wi-Fi. I'm sure most of you maybe have figured that out. But you can get on right now on this menti.com, which is a like instant feedback sort of tool. And so I'll give you a second to either get on the Wi-Fi if you haven't, or scan this QR code, which will take you to this online portal where we'll kind of conclude our thing, or you can just go to menti.com and type that in. And I'm going to shrink this a little bit here, but keep it up so that you can still see it. And I think I will do this. And I think I closed mine, but let's go here. Okay, watch this. I'm demonstrating in live how to do this. We teach each. Teach one, each one. That's the thing. Okay, cool. So close that. Look at that precocious little Ryan Smolar, 11 years old, giving his mom a big wet kiss. So I just wanted to give you a second to turn to your neighbor and, just tell them you've been absorbing so much this morning. I know it's really dense, and that's why we really pack these sessions, and then we'll have more fun together out in the field. But what's your why? Like, why do you get out of bed in the morning and work on this issue, this public space issue? I can tell you and start with myself that, I grew up in the suburbs. I grew up in suburban LA. And, I was overweight. My mom was my best friend, and my parents got a divorce. That's an awe line, guys. Give me a little sympathy. Okay, yeah. Thank you. But then I grew up, and I became an urbanist, and I learned it wasn't my fault. It was the public realm. It was the built environment. Somebody did this to me. And I've been in a state of recovery and wanting to help others to not grow up in that environment, to grow up on a street like the street that Jim Burke runs and be one of those kids with a hula hoop and meeting the mayor and learning about the way my city works and my neighborhood works and different cultures that I could have been friends with. And that's possible. This is the switch, the true switch that I feel like we're making. And it's every time I kind of get like, why am I doing this? The money ain't good, no respect. I go back to that kid and I remember that is why I do it. And so I'd love you to just turn to your neighbor, take a few minutes, and just tell your neighbor why you think you do this. If you don't know, just start talking and it might come out. So go ahead and do that for a few minutes. If you want, you can put the information in this as well. All right, friends, let's go ahead and come on back to the sad suburban youth up at front. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. Why does that work? All right, guys. So that is so great. It was amazing to hear that river of all your voices. If you manage to get into the Menti, I know it says ask a question. Sorry, I'm beta testing this. Have not used it before, but now understand it. And so it's kind of the first one was just asking you what your why was when it says ask a question. It then takes you to a second question on how should we focus our time together? I think there's kind of 4 buckets, and Tim will be going through these tomorrow, that there's the finding the money, innovating the government, deepening our peer learning, and building political power. These are sort of 4 big buckets for some of the ideas that are going to be moving forward the next couple days. And then the last question actually comes from Setha Lowe's framework of why public space matters, a new book from her about the different domains that public space touches, which makes it that kind of esoteric, hard to talk about, all-encompassing subject matter that often gets us just in a state of panic every time somebody says, "What's placemaking?" And you go, there's the environmental and sustainability aspects. There's the cultural expression and identity domain, the economic development domain, the health and well-being domain that, you got Rachel and Ben here from the Memphis Medical District and Longfellow Longwood Collective up in Boston. There's the social interaction and community building. You know, we had Fred Kent here with the Social Life Project, which is sort of this next iteration of the project for public spaces, because it's really all about social life. Accessibility and equity, safety and security. We're hearing so much about gender in city these days, and really thinking with and through more lenses of the city making. The civic engagement and participation. We heard from Daniela about democracy is at the very stake of our public spaces. And then I added one, design and beauty, because I think a lot of people like John Bella over there know the power of design, and a lot of people are attracted to design, and it is that language of change. He's that one guy right there. The concept here is to really understand more about, wow, I guess it's a real social group. No, that's very nice. It's wonderful to hear about these different things or reasons that we come to the table and the systems that we're working in. What is that? Okay, we can keep that up. So let me go now just to some logistics for the rest of the day here. I think Setha too is in the Zoom. So shout out Setha. You can kill it because now we're only for New Yorkers. All right, so thank you, Zoom folks, for joining us. We had a great time with you in the room.